Psychology student here at Ohio State, and I'm also an academic coach at the Dennis Learning Center. The Dennis Learning Center is an awesome place on campus, and I'll go into it a little bit more at the end of the presentation, but we provide a variety of students to help students with their academic endeavors. So that's awesome. And also, I don't know if I mentioned, but my pronouns are she, her, hers. And then this presentation is going to be, I'm going to get into it in a little bit, but we're talking about memory tools. Memory is something that is obviously very important in being successful in your classes, because you need to be able to remember the material in order to be successful on exams and things like that. So we're going to talk about some helpful tips and strategies to help you be the most successful in your memory during your academic year.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just for Bella's sake and mine, if you guys are attendees, if you could type into the chat maybe what your degree level is and what you're studying, just so we have a sense of sort of who's in the audience, and that might be helpful for our presenter. So if you want to just type that into the chat, that would be great.
And then whenever you're ready, I have a presentation so I can share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen anytime.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we're going to try this. I feel like I'm never fantastic at making it. Is this good?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, awesome. Let's see in the chat.
So it looks like we have a variety of degree levels, variety of programs here, so that's great.
Cool, yeah. We have a very big variety. This is awesome.
Yeah, feel free to go ahead and get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, sounds good. So welcome everyone to the Memory Tools presentation. I'm going to talk a lot more about the Dennis Learning Center at the end of the presentation. We'll give you some more resources. We offer workshops like this, and then one-on-one coaching, which is what I do. And then we also have some awesome classes that we also offer. So who am I? I already introduced myself a little bit, but my name is Bella. I'm a third-year psychology major. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm also a coach at the Dennis Learning Center. And the Dennis Learning Center is essentially a center on campus that provides a variety of services to support students in college and help them succeed. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. But for now, sorry, I'm moving my thing around so that I can see the slides. But for now, we're going to be talking about the Memory Tools workshop. And I don't believe that we have a worksheet for this. This is a little bit outdated. So go ahead and follow along and take notes if you would like to. I'm going to go over some workshop expectations on the next slide. So workshop expectations and guidelines. We don't provide the PowerPoint after the presentation, so please take notes. Taking notes is fantastic for your memory as well, which we'll kind of get into. So it's great practice. Also, try not to take pictures of the slides. This is just for copyright issues. I believe, Caroline, will there be a recording sent out of this afterward?
Yes, we will post the recording to our website. Yeah,
okay,
probably
awesome.
In a couple days.
Yeah, so that's essentially the same thing, but better. So yeah, wait for that recording. Definitely actively take notes. And then also, please participate during our discussions. You guys have already been awesome with typing your information into the chat, so I don't think we'll have an issue with that. But it'll help you guys get the most out of the workshop, and it'll also make the workshop a lot more enjoyable for everyone. And then I'm not sure if we're going to take a 5-minute break after each objective, just depending on our timing. We're going to see where that goes, but I'll give you guys a little bit of a brain break. And then, oh, sorry. Yeah, if you have any questions, type them into the chat. Caroline and or I will get to them and we'll respond to you. And then when you see this leaf, it means that we're going to be typing in the chat. We're not going to do breakout rooms just because it is such a small group of people. But look out for this, and that will be when we'll do our discussions. We have two main objectives for this workshop. One, we're going to discover the basics of learning effectively in the classroom setting. And then our main focus is going to be learning about effective tools to enhance our memory and recall in our classes. So there are 4 main steps to learning effectively. The first one is going to be regulating your attention, making sure that you are paying attention during your classes and readings and things like that, so that you can actually absorb the material. The second one is going to be creating meaning. In order to be able to remember things, it's very helpful to create meaning and create that connection with the material. The third one is going to be organizing your information in a way that's like easily accessible and in a way that you can really get to very easily and understand easily. And then the fourth one is going to be practicing retrieval, practicing testing that memory. So to start out, we're going to talk about regulating attention. A big part of that is going to be reducing distractions. Distractions limit your ability to learn new information. That's no secret to anyone. If you're scrolling through your phone while you're in your lecture, you're definitely going to be splitting your attention between those two things, and you're not going to be absorbing as much of the material as you would like to. So there are a few ways to reduce distractions, and these are going to be a little bit different for online classes versus in-person classes. If you're online, it's a lot easier to relocate, go in another room. If your roommates are talking or something like that, putting distractions out of reach. So maybe putting your phone in another room, or if you're in a classroom setting, putting your phone in your bag. Making sure that you aren't multitasking, which I know that we are all guilty of, especially with our phones. Choosing music without lyrics when you're studying or reading is a very important thing, just because then your brain isn't trying to focus on two things at once, even if it's not necessarily an intentional thing. It's very easy to get focused on the lyrics of your music. So there's some awesome like study playlists out there on YouTube or Apple Music or Spotify or things like that. And it's just really nice, mellow background music if you can't study with complete silence. And then building in breaks or rewards. This is really important for motivation as well, because it's going to motivate you to get your work done. You're going to want to do it more if you have, let's say, dinner with friends planned at the end of the day for doing all of your work or that kind of thing. And then building in breaks is also important because your brain gets very tired after studying for a few hours. So building in 5-minute breaks about every 30 minutes is going to be helpful to prevent that brain fatigue and that kind of thing. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat. I'm going to try to check that pretty frequently. And let me know if I'm going too quickly, if I need to go back a slide, any of that kind of thing. But I'm going to move on. Okay. I don't know why we have 2 of those slides. Okay, so I want you guys to type into the chat now what kind of distractions interfere with your learning and your past experiences. This can be with online or in person or just when you're studying. I'm super curious to know. I know that for me, especially with online learning, when I had my phone right there and I was in an online lecture, it would be very easy to just scroll through that, especially because I wasn't visible to the professor necessarily. Mental stress, yeah, that's a big thing, because if you have a bunch of like random things running around in your head, like things you have to do later that day, that can definitely distract from what you're doing at the time. Fatigue, yes, yes, that's a big one as well, because your brain just can't work as well when you're super tired and falling asleep. People's conversation next to you, yeah, and that's difficult because when we're in person, um, we can't necessarily control the people next to us, like when we're in our in-person classes in the lecture hall. So that one is definitely difficult. I think probably moving to a different spot in the classroom would be the best way to do that. Cell phone, university, emails, online meetings with too many breaks between them. Yes, those are all very valid. Cell phone, we already talked about. That's a big one. University emails, yeah. I feel like this isn't one that we talk about as much, but if an email pops up on my phone from OSU, it's very easy for me to just look at that and space out from what the professor is saying. Working at home, yes. With the roommates, yes. With roommates, it is difficult, especially without online learning, because we all have different schedules and all have different like standards of how we want our work at home environment to be. So yeah, trying to make sure that your roommates don't bother you is a big thing. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for that participation. I really enjoyed hearing your responses and I relate to so many of them. So let's move on. Let's talk about regulating attention. So one way to keep your attention up is study cycles, because as we talked about earlier, your brain gets tired when you're studying for a long period of time. It happens to everyone. No one is superhuman and can study for like 5 hours straight. So a way to kind of address this is with study cycles. So taking small little study breaks can really boost your attention and productivity. We like to do the Pomodoro technique, which is basically studying for about 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break and then studying for another 5 minutes break, and so on. During your breaks, the awesome things to do would be getting a snack, moving around, checking Instagram. Although if you are checking Instagram, definitely exercise caution in that, as with any social media, just because it's easy to keep on scrolling. I would probably recommend the having our snack or moving around over that. But just kind of taking a step back from your work, even if you're on a roll with something, making sure that you are getting those breaks in so that you don't crash and burn and get super tired from working for so long. And then just below that, we have Netflix is not a great option for breaks. I would not recommend that at all. Use Netflix as like a reward at the end of the day or something like we talked about earlier, rather than a brain break, because you don't want to get absorbed into that and forget about your work. But yeah, regulating your attention, study cycles, taking those breaks is going to be very important and very useful to doing successful study sessions. So now I want you all to type into the chat 2 ways that you can regulate your attention while studying. We just went over a few of them. We talked about putting phone away, limiting other distractions, that kind of thing. Also talked about study cycles and making sure you're taking those breaks. So just type into the chat 2 ways that you want to start regulating your attention while you're studying. Mute your phone. Yes, that is an awesome one. That is something that I want to do too. Go to the library. Yes, the library is a great place to get work done because it is typically quiet and you can kind of control that environment a little more than your home environment sometimes. And locking and putting away your cell phone. Yes, I'm going to put my cell phone deep into my bag this semester. That's one of my goals while I'm studying. Work on a browser that only has one tab open. Yes, that is a great way to do it, because then if you do have other tabs, even if it's just like your email, you won't be tempted to check that. Great. Combine study with a friend. Yeah, studying with a friend is a great way to kind of stay accountable for doing your work and making sure that you are on task. Yeah, a caution there, which you all know, is just not to get super distracted with the friend, but if the friend is a good study partner, that's a great way to do it. Phone in another room. Yep, phone on do not disturb mode. Yeah, these are all awesome. I'm seeing phone coming up a lot, and that makes a lot of sense because that is a big issue for a lot of us. Okay, awesome. Thank you for participating. Okay, now we're going to go on to meaning. So another big part of memory is making sure that we attach meaning to them so that we are able to remember them a little bit easier. So, sorry, I just lost my place. So coming up with your own examples and connections to the lecture material makes it a lot easier to retrieve later. Emotional connections to what your, like the content in your class makes things a lot easier to remember. So for example, you probably have distinct examples of your childhood pet. If you can think back to that, like really specific instances where you were playing with them or when you first got them or things like that, but you probably don't remember what you did in your 4th grade math class because there probably wasn't a lot of emotion connected to that. Now, if you threw up in your 4th grade class during the lesson about addition or multiplication, then you probably remember that a little bit more just because it was an emotionally charged instance. Um, so yeah, attaching meaning to what you're learning, if you can kind of think back on your past experiences with that, is going to be important. Again, it might be hard to look back on a very specific lecture that you had, let's say a food science lecture, just a random one, because there might not have been a lot of emotion there or meaning. But other events definitely a lot easier to remember. Another great thing with meaning is that if you use imagery to kind of aid that in that meaning, it's going to be a lot easier to retrieve and to remember. So for example, these words on the left would be very hard to remember without this wacky image next to it. Tuxedo frog, coffee frog, like those are all just completely random things. But then when we have this image next to it, you can kind of create a mental image in your mind really quickly. And that'll aid in your memory because it's kind of a bizarre image and it's a lot easier to remember that than it would be just a list of words. And so in a little bit, we're going to talk about kind of combining different ways to create meaning in order to increase your memory. So imagery is a great one to kind of tap in on when you're studying and trying to increase your memory. So another one, using elaboration. So connecting the material to your own experiences and examples and kind of expanding on that is going to make information a lot easier to remember. Connecting things to our personal lives is a great way to do it. I know I'm a psychology major, so this comes pretty easily with the major. A lot of things, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example right off the top of my head, but psychology is a very relatable field. So it's easy to make those connections to my life. And then since it is personal for me, it's going to be a lot easier to remember since I have those emotional experiences with it. A great thing for this, for elaboration, is using mind maps. So kind of like mapping out different concepts, connecting them. So I'm trying to think of a good example for this that everyone would relate to. Let's see, like different animals, like figuring out like, okay, here's a frog and then like the frog lives here and like connecting all of the different things like for a biology class. That was a bad example, but something like that, just making sure that you're connecting everything and kind of figuring out how they all work together. Connecting a memory from your childhood to a scientific problem, something like that is going to be useful because the scientific problem might be super abstract, but when you connect it to a personal experience, it's going to enhance that memory. And then if you can, connecting information from one class to another class is a great way to strengthen your understanding because especially if you're further along in your major, they're likely going to be connected anyway. And then you just have that extra little connection in there that will help you remember for both classes. Next, we're going to talk about mnemonic devices. Chances are you guys have all used these. I know that I used them a lot when I was in my like elementary schools and high schools. Essentially what a mnemonic device is, is creating a word or a phrase, like usually kind of a wacky, like funny one, by just using the first letter of each word to be remembered. So right here for the order of operations, for the parentheses, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction, that's like the order for like the PEMDAS thing for math. Excuse me for that. I haven't used PEMDAS in a while, but that's the order of operations. That's kind of a tricky thing to remember, but you can create a mnemonic device and it might be, please email my dad a shark, which you can create imagery from because that's a really weird scenario and your brain automatically kind of creates this image right here of emailing your dad a shark. So that's going to help you remember it because it's just this weird, bizarre thing that you can create imagery from. And it's going to be a lot easier to remember than just the order of operations right there. Also great for creating meaning is using dual coding theory. So according to dual coding theory, you're more likely to remember information when you experience it both verbally and non-verbally. This is why it's really helpful when professors not only explain the information, but also provide like these visual examples as well. So what this means for studying, you can combine verbal and visual information. For example, you could draw and label the phases of mitosis and practice explaining what happens in each phase. You're doing both of those little strategies to encode the information a little bit easier. So try writing out the steps to a problem and then explaining them out loud. You're encoding them in two different ways by like writing them out and like thinking about that, doing it on paper, and then explaining them out loud. One thing that I love doing is teaching your like friends or your roommates or your parents about a topic you're trying to study. This will really make you make those connections in your head and make sure that you actually know the material, because when you have to explain it to someone, it's a different deal than just reading about it and saying, oh yeah, I got that. So it really tests your understanding, and it goes with that dual coding theory where you're speaking it out loud. So group discussion, that was a ton of information, but if you can recall the past several slides, what is one way you want to create meaning while you study this semester or this year? And why are you choosing that method? I'll give you a second to type into the chat. I know that I definitely want to explain things to my roommates a lot more this year. I know that when I was doing my training for the Dentist Learning Center and we were learning all of this educational psychology stuff, I explained a lot of it to them because I thought it was super cool, and then it accidentally helped me remember it. So that was a really cool experience, and I want to do more of that with my classes if my roommates will listen. Explain things to my classmates and friends. Yeah, that's an awesome way to do it. I love that. And that also helps with like, if you are in a class with one of your friends, or if you make friends with one of your classmates and you're explaining it to each other, you're not only helping each other, but you're also encoding it a little bit better. Relate to yourself or others' experiences. Yes, that's awesome. Relating it to your own experiences will definitely help with memory. Use your own words to explain a concept. Again, yes, awesome. Rephrasing things and using your own words, especially when taking notes too in classes, is definitely going to help with encoding the information and memory. I enjoy group discussions since it gives you room to share what you got in class. Yes, yes. Clarifications from classmates. Yeah, group discussions are an awesome way to do it, because then it also like it helps you remember that information better because you're talking about it out loud and you're creating those experiences, especially like if you're a little nervous to share in class. There's that emotional factor as well. You like to draw while listening to something, and that's helpful to create an image in your mind. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Okay, awesome. Oh, we have more. Relating to something I know, yes, awesome. Sorry, I'm trying to like navigate the chat window and like the screens. Um, Images or graphs that's able to explain complex concepts in a very simple way. Yeah, those are awesome visual tools that I like using as well. Group discussions. If you're an active participant, yes, group discussions are absolutely fantastic if you're actively engaged in those. I know it's not always the easiest thing in the world. It's a little bit intimidating sometimes when you're in front of a whole class. But I like to just tell myself that it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks of me. I'm just getting the most out of it and creating that memory connection. Link the concept in some case. Yeah, awesome. Thank you everyone for participating. I'm excited for you guys to use these methods this semester. Okay, so now we're going to talk about organization. Why it matters. It's a lot easier to remember things when they have a logical structure rather than everything just being all jumbled around in your brain or on paper. Students definitely tend to retain more information when they find their own structure for the material. So organizing in a way that makes sense to you is going to be a lot more beneficial than just copying down what your like the organization method that your professor has. I know that it definitely sometimes takes a little bit more work to create your own organizational method, but it definitely pays off. It makes connecting the concepts a lot easier. So one way that we can do that is by using schemas. So a schema is essentially a frame that allows your mind to organize the incoming information quickly by relating it to prior knowledge. So a little example of a schema, a lot of people in like industrialized nations, like the United States, have a schema for what a car is. Your overall schema for a car, it might include subcategories of different kinds of cars, like a sports car, like what a van is, what a compact car is, that kind of thing. And so it's just like this overall framework that you kind of use to organize the things of the world. And activating these schemas during your studying sessions or whatnot makes it a lot easier to understand the information during the lecture. So this is also why skimming the assigned reading before class is really helpful, because it kind of gives you a schema for the different things that you're going to be covering in class and the different topics. Another organizational method, chunking and abstracting. So here in the table on the left, we have a little example of chunking, which is essentially just grouping things by similar meaning so that they can be more efficiently stored in your brain. If you see on the far left, we just have no chunking or grouping at all. It's just a list of things. It would be hard to remember off the top of your head. The next column, we have random grouping. So it's apples, strawberries, yogurt, and then the next group is chicken, grapes, milk, and ice cream. And those things don't really go together within the group, so this is not going to help us that much more. But then on the far right, we have things grouped by like the section of the grocery store and the type of food they are. So we have apples, grapes, strawberries, zucchini. Those are all fruits and vegetables. So that's going to be easy to remember, an easy chunk. The next one is milk, yogurt, ice cream. That's all dairy. So that makes sense. That makes sense to be in a group together. And then chicken, fish, steak are all meat. So that's also a good chunk, good group of things, and it'll help you remember things a little bit more because they're in those organized groups. Another thing is abstracting. Abstracting is summarizing information, organizing it based on similar levels of importance. This can be really good for classes where it's like a hierarchy, like more like, I don't know how to describe it. I feel like these are really good for like science-y classes when you have the different levels of like a biology class, like the different levels of cell organization or something like that. It's been a while since I've had a biology class, but that kind of thing. Just making sure that the most, like the highest level of things are at the top, the lowest level of things are at the bottom, that kind of deal. That's going to be helpful, just making sure you understand the flow of the information. Next, we're going to talk about retrieval. Retrieving the information from your memory is a very important part of memory because otherwise there's no real point in memorizing things in the first place. So distributed practice really helps with retrieval. What distributed practice is making sure that when you're going to first learn the material, you're going to remember it right away, but then eventually you're going to lose that memory of the material over time. So making sure that you are studying in little chunks every day or two is going to help you kind of make sure that that retrieval and that retention is as high as it can be. So we have this little chart here. You see that when you first learn the material, it's 100% retention because you just learned it. And then over the next day, slowly that retention goes down a little bit. You're forgetting a little bit of the information. And then when you study the next day, it goes right back up, right back up to the start, and you're retaining 100% of the material again. And then this next curve is a little bit slower for the loss of the material, the loss of retention. And then when you study the third day, you're all the way up here again. You're reviewing, and then the forgetting curve is a little bit less steep. So that distributed practice, that continued reviewing and practicing of the material really helps with the retention. It also keeps you attentive and it allows you to fit more studying into your schedule so that you aren't, for example, cramming the night before the exam. It's really good to kind of plan these little study sessions in a model that will kind of mimic this distributed practice that you're studying a little bit every day, reviewing a little bit every day, and that sort of thing. Self-testing is another excellent way to practice your retrieval. It helps you monitor what you know and what you don't know. Because sometimes when you're studying, it's easy to just skim the material and then say, oh yeah, I know that, without actually practicing the retrieving part. So self-testing is a great way to practice this retrieval and make sure that you are actually able to retrieve the information. It also helps you retrieve review all of the material, not just the parts that you find a little bit tricky. Again, it can be really easy to fool yourself into thinking that you know everything if you're just skimming things, but self-testing really helps you know exactly what you know, or know exactly what you actually know rather than just what you think you know. And it should be done in a way that mimics the exam, so in the right environment and timed. What I like to do is put all of my distractions away, just like we talked about. Make sure that if there aren't any notes available for the exam, you're not self-testing and practicing that test in a way that allows you to have notes. You really want to recreate that testing environment, make sure everything's quiet, make sure that you're timing it, giving yourself the right amount of time for each problem, that kind of thing. And that's also going to help with testing anxiety and making sure that you're prepared for that actual testing environment so that the only thing that's new is the material and the test rather than the environment as well. Also, using questions is going to be very helpful for retrieval. Writing questions for yourself helps you self-test. Just reading questions will increase your recall of information, but making sure that you're writing the questions and then answering those questions is going to help you practice retrieving the information, which is going to be a little bit more effective than just recalling it. And then using flashcards to practice answering questions is a great way to do it. Write the question on one side and then the answer on the other side, and kind of just say it out loud to yourself. Again, that's with the dual encoding part of it. Saying it out loud will be very helpful. Oh, someone in the chat said, Natalia said that they use blind review. Yes, blind review that's a good thing. Natalia, if you want to expand on that a little more, I would love that. Yeah, when you're practicing in a test situation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to explain all of that in English.
Yeah. You're good.
But that's that's actually a 2-session simulation. So you can do the simulation with the time. and the questions. So that's the whole challenge. And then you can do the same simulation again without the time. So you can write down your thoughts and understand what you were thinking on that. And then how do you say, marking the multiple choices in the yeah, and then you can compare the results. So one when you had the challenge of the time, and the other one without the challenge of the time. So you had to think, and you can understand if you have understood the concept or not.
Right.
And you can
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a really good way to do it. I haven't really heard of that before, but it has that part of it where you are making sure that you're timing yourself and then comparing it to the other. So it's kind of like this standard of, oh, am I at the place that I want to be with like the retention of the material when I am not timed. So that's really cool. Thank you for explaining that. I might have to try that out. Okay, where was I? Using questions. Yes, I just talked about flashcards. Using flashcards, writing that question on one side, answer on the other side is a good way to do it. And you can also use apps to practice questions too. I know that there are a ton of great apps out there. I don't have them off the top of my head right now, but anything that's going to help you, like Quizlet or that kind of thing. Quizlet has a really good kind of simulation for flashcards. And I think that they also have things like typing in the answer to the question, that kind of thing. A lot of different methods to study within that app. So that's cool. And I think there are a lot of other ones out there. So yeah, using those questions, questioning yourself, making sure that you're actually knowing the material and being able to retrieve it is going to be important. So we're going to do one last discussion. I want to know, what class do you want to practice retrieval strategies in the most? I know that many of us might not know the formats of our classes yet. So maybe just in general, which retrieval strategies are you most excited to practice? And then also you can type in what retrieval strategy is your favorite. If you've already tried a few of these, I would love to hear your answers. I think that I definitely want to use the distributed practice a little bit more. So making sure that I'm reviewing the information every day and hopefully doing it in a different way every day, so that I'm practicing it in a lot of different ways with that dual encoding rather than just doing it once and then forgetting about it until I'm studying for the exam, which I unfortunately have a bad habit of doing. You've never used flashcards, but you'll definitely try it. I would say I've used Quizlet in the past for flashcards and I liked it a lot. That's Quizlet. But yeah, I would definitely recommend flashcards, especially for things where you do have to memorize information. It's very useful. You want to practice self-test. Yes, thinking and making questions. That's going to help a lot with really encoding the information and then practicing retrieving the information as well. You'd like to use these strategies when you are reading literature. Yes, that is fantastic. When you're reading your textbook and that kind of thing, these are also going to be great strategies to use then when you're encoding that information. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. You have all been, statistics class, yes. You need to do a lot of memorization there. So these strategies are going to be great for that. Chemistry, distributed practice, yes, awesome. I know that there's a lot of information thrown at you in chemistry, so distributed practice is really going to ensure that you are processing all of that information in an efficient way. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so now you have a lot of tools in your toolbox to successfully complete exams, papers, presentations, and just be successful in the semester. We've covered ways to regulate your attention, so putting that phone away, putting all those distractions away, create meaning. We talked about that emotional connection. We talked about mnemonics, that kind of thing. Organizing your information in a way that's good for you, not necessarily the way that your professor does it. And then practicing that retrieval by that self-testing and using those questions and things like that. Oh, and also that was a lot of information to process at once. So definitely Caroline's going to send out this recording in a few days, I believe, and I would recommend going back if anything is confusing to you. I'm also going to talk about a few more resources that we have at the Dennis Learning Center in just a second, if you want to investigate into those, because I definitely just threw a lot of information at you. That's hard to process. But thank you so much for attending our online workshop. I'm going to go over a few things about how the Dennis Learning Center can continue to support you now. So we are located in the Youngkin Success Center. That's a building very south on campus. Visit us there. I think that we're going to be there a little bit more since we are not as online anymore. We're going to do some in person. So at the Dennis Learning Center, we've got coaching, which is what I do for the most part. It's free 1-hour sessions and it's one-on-one. We can help you with a variety of topics that I'll go over in just a second. We also have workshops like the one that you were just in. These are by request. We also offer workshops through FYSS, which is a first-year success series, but anyone can take those workshops. They will likely be on our website with available times. I think we're working on getting all of those on our websites. And then we also offer classes, and they're 2 and 3 credit hour electives, which I'm going to talk about right now. So these are all the courses that we offer through the Dennis Learning Center. You can look them up on that course catalog. These courses are aimed to help you develop your study skills and academic skills and things like that, so that you can be as successful as possible in your classes. These classes are taught by our awesome instructors in our Dennis Learning Center system. And so we have things like learning and motivation, online learning strategies, becoming a self-regulated learner, and it'll give you great tools to kind of be your best in an academic center. And I've heard that they're super fun classes. Some of our coaches have taken them and they loved them. So we offer those. Definitely check them out if you're interested in refining your skills in any of these areas. We also have more workshops, like I mentioned. This was our memory tools workshop. We also have all of these workshops that cover these topics. They're awesome. I would highly recommend going to another if you can. And then we have coaching, which I was touching on earlier. It's free, it's one-on-one. It's targeted to your needs. So you come with like an idea in mind about what you would like to discuss. You can discuss things like study methods, test taking, learning in class, memorizing information, motivation, planning and time management, and more. Our goal is to help you guys be the best students that you can be and really refine those academic related skills. But thank you so much. Here's our social media if you want to follow it. We'll give you updates on workshops and things like that. But you guys were such an awesome audience and you were actively participating and it was fantastic. So thank you for that. Yes, thank you. But then also we would love your feedback. If you have a chance, we would love for you to fill out this workshop feedback form. It'll help me a lot. It'll help my colleagues a lot. It would be much appreciated, just so we can get that feedback and make the presentations the best that they can be. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bella. And thank you very much to our audience. You guys really were great participators, I would say above average with the participation. So that's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up about anything that Bella presented or even just in general? Feel free to say the questions out loud, or if you want to type them into the chat, that's fine too. As you think about that, just a reminder to check out the calendar in the Carmen orientation course. We have lots of events going on this week for new students, so I hope you'll be able to join us for some of those. Again, as we've mentioned, the recordings will be available. If you scroll way up in the chat, I put the link to where those will be. I will also put my email address in the chat here. If you can't find the link and want to contact me, I can send it to you. It usually takes us a couple days to get those up on the website. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. We have 2 more academic offerings this week. The academic resources panel is tomorrow morning, and then we will have the last workshop on Thursday. So I hope you're able to join us back then. So if there aren't any other questions or anything, we will wrap up for today, but thank you so much.